The reason being was because he wasn't like giving them access. They were basically trying to blackmail him for money. They made him call his mum up while they were torturing him and be like, I need 20k right now. It was very common to hear in the probation office stuff like, a bit of luck, he'll be stabbed next week. And I'll be like, did you really just say that? Like,
what sort of people do you work with? I don't know the correct term for them. Are they still convicts at that point? Are they ex-convicts at that point? What's the actual term that...
Ex-offenders.
Ex-offenders, okay.
But obviously, let's be honest, none of us are dumb. Like, we know sometimes people are out there trying to, I mean, you could arguably say make a living for themselves or doing what they have to do that they know that they can do in life and make money.
But this is part of the job, right? So
yeah,
people that reoffend, the ex-offenders that reoffend, as you mentioned, get recalled and whatnot.
Yeah, they would get recalled after a certain amount of breaches, we would say, of your license. So you come out of prison on a license. It's got like conditions on it. There's a set, like, maybe, I can't remember, it's been a couple of years since I've been in probation, but I think it was about 6 or 7 license conditions that are set conditions. Like, you have to report to your officer whenever you're instructed to in probation. You must not leave the UK whilst you're on license without getting permission. Declare your home address where you're staying. Like, there's things like that are standard conditions, and then you add like what we'd say additional or bespoke conditions for maybe like someone that's a drug dealer. They would come out and you could add from a set of questions that were already preset. Like,
is that what they have? Things like you can't hang around certain people that are also known
gang affiliation,
to,
or don't go to this postcode, or if you've got more than one phone, you need to disclose your SIM card and IMEI of the phones. If you're travelling in cars, you need to give your registration plate. Each one of these is like a thing. And if they're found to be breaching, so that could be like with police doing stop and search, and if I did a background intelligence check, which I was supposed to do on each case every 3 months, you've got to remember as well, there was some nasty people out there that be sex offenders, and trigger warning, I guess, but that, and like people that were very extremely violent towards women, or like to anybody generally, like, you need to be checking up on what they're doing in the community, you know, whatever your attitude is. I'm in this position where I need to keep the public safe, that's what I'm going to do. And yeah, that was part of our what would you say, like, practice. We have to do that every 3 months and review their risk management plan, which was some long 70-page plan that I had to write out for each person and make sure they followed to try and rehabilitate them in the community. I'm responsible for that. So it's quite a lot of pressure.
That is a lot of pressure, to be fair.
Well, I went off on a tangent there. Where did I was coming from?
No, that was talking about the probation services, sort of people that you deal with, them being recalled, and situations as to why they're recalled and things like that. You coming from that kind of general good nature and that background of wanting to help people, and then you're working with people that you're going the extra mile for, and then they go back and reoffend. Has those situations ever happened with you, and what kind of, obviously without naming names and keeping things confidential, but what kind of happened? And
yeah, there's been ones that proper broke my heart, because I really knew that I bent over backwards for somebody. I would always work from that angle. I would always kind of be realistic when I was working with cases as well, just generally, like, understanding if someone comes into the office and smells of weed, really and truly, you're supposed to tell them off or caution or warn them. But I was working in South London, like, it's something that most people that walk through the door are going to be doing, and it's not, they've turned up to their appointment, so I'm going to be fair and not caution them for coming in and actually doing the right thing. And really, that's nothing, not even the worst thing that they could be doing outside of the office. Do you know what I mean? So I used to try and work like that. But there was a young boy, I'll always remember this case. I think it was literally the first case that I ever got in probation, and he had a long release date, like, until I was actually going to have to work with him face to face. And he was in a youth offenders institute. I can't remember what one it was, but it was quite far away. And he was a refugee. Just for reference, he'd come from Somalia, and I say that because when you come to the UK from Somalia and you're seeking asylum, I'm pretty sure that 99% of the time you're granted refugee, like, you're granted stay straight away, because it's a war-torn country. They can't send you back, like, for human rights. So he's here, but he's seen all this stuff, and his mum's in Somalia, lost. He's not had contact with her for like 4 years because it's a war out there and stuff. Yeah. He's living with his dad and his older brother, who was like a prolific gang member that stabbed someone to death, that got off a bus. He's just yeah, had the odds against him, bless him. So anyway, I used to have to call him and write letters and stuff to him in prison, and he'd always like message like whatever, write in the message about how he would want to change his life, want to like go. What did he want to get into? It was like electrics or something at college, and he was like, he'd even started on a in YOS, which is Youth Offending Service, and then migrated to probation, adult probation, whilst he was in jail because he turned 18 during that time, and become an adult, and that's where I picked him up from. So he's used to like the kids service basically, like this is adult probation. So I said to him, look, we're gonna make a plan, blah blah blah, when you come out, and we were building rapport for months, maybe like 8 months or so until he got released. When he got released, he was really nervous, and like the prison I could like message people that worked on the wing or in probation in prison and be like, look, how's this person getting on in jail at the moment? Like, what is there anything that you need to know? Like, I could request their prison notes at any time, read how their behaviour was in prison, because it's there to actually inform me how to risk management in the community, all of that stuff. And I've got to like, write reports and dossiers and stuff on people and their behaviour, how they work in prison, and that's a very testing environment that brings out the worst in people sometimes. So I'd ask all of that. But anyway, in this case, it was just he was very nervous, had a stomach ache, like was a bit nervous about being released. I think he'd been in prison for maybe like 2.5 years. I think it was a county lines offence. And yeah, I'd made a folder for him. So I was like, no way I'm letting this young man, like, first case, remember, like, no way I'm letting him go to the street. Like, if there's any way in my control, I'm going to change this life. Being slightly naive because you can't have control over anybody unless they want to be helped. But I thought, I'm going to lay out the path kind of thing. The story's sad, do you know what I mean? And anyway, why not? He's
What
still
happened to
young.
him in the end?
I made this plan out. I got him a hostel space where he got like, this is again unheard of, but a hostel space where he got placed for like 3 months with 8 weeks of key work support to help him settle back into the community, proper key work support based in the home. I got him on benefits. I made like a benefits account for him. I'd done a housing referral form, I think, duty to refer to the council, because he didn't have an address. His dad wouldn't have him back to like help him with housing in the long run. I think I was speaking to social services that went back and forth for a while because they were like the type of section of care that he was under in social services when he was taken to the UK doesn't entitle him to having a free house, and not free house, but like help to get a house. And a lot of care leavers often get like placed in a flat. He didn't have that at all on the section of care act that he was under. So I had to do this all from scratch. Very traumatized young man. And yeah, like we were getting on fine and stuff, but soon after I was doing these checks on him, and yeah, it was coming back like lots of intel that he's found in a car at night in Brixton Hill with like a bunch of friends with lots of money, lots of cash on them, and the police officers like messaging me and saying like, look, there's a bunch of cash on them. They're sitting there, didn't find anything else, but look, just to let you know, they were in a gang hotspot late at night. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not. I'm not gonna like jump on that. Usually, a lot of old school, and I wouldn't say proper, but I'd say old school probation officers would recall or would, you know, severely punish that person, write a proper severe warning or whatever it is to the client and stuff, just knowing that little bit of intel. But really and truly, in Lambeth, most people are doing things like that are subject to probation. So you can't really be on top of that all the time. And also, he actually might be sitting in the car. I know chances are it might be unlikely, but what you think, he might be sitting there just with his friends that have got cash, and the police, we don't know how they can operate. They might have been painting it in a way where, they've all got a bunch of cash on them, but it might have really been like, do you know what I mean? It could have just, there's not enough evidence for me to take someone's freedom away and put them back in jail. And yeah, so I kept getting things like that. And then something happened to him where in Lambeth, and he had to leave. So I had to like communicate him to go to Croydon and make him turn up to like this hostel centre kind of thing and ask them to give him a room so he could move borough, because the council just weren't helping, social services weren't helping. And I was like, this is a young person at risk that's been stabbed before and obviously has been through a lot of trauma. It then transpired anyways, after all this chaotic stuff, that he'd ended up being found, maybe the third or fourth time now I've heard from the police about different things he's up to, where they found him and it's like, you can't get him for that, but we know what it is, but you can't get him for that kind of thing. I think once he had like a little bit of drugs on him, and we knew he was dealing. The way they were packaged up was like he was dealing, but there wasn't a big amount on there, on him, like things like that, you know. Anyway, they got found in this 15-year-old boy's flat with his mum, who was already there because he'd been targeted by gangs, in a safeguarded flat where he had to leave his home address because he was targeted and was placed in a different flat with his mum, like I said, in the family, because the gang were like, yeah, I'm going to
Targeted
come
as a victim.
yeah, well, he'd obviously got involved with gangs or county lines or whatever, and they were now after him, targeting him as a kid. And these lot, my guy on probation, was affiliated to a gang, and that gang were found with that boy in that flat, and they'd been affiliated with him before, so they'd found him since where he lived, and nothing
So
had happened, but
was that kid in any danger? Was it?
yeah, he was being groomed, or I don't know what. Like, I'm trying to think back to the story now. This is going like maybe about like 4 or 5 years, but I think he had been doing, it was like maybe a drug there, or they were trying to intimidate him and bully him into doing things, but he was being targeted badly. They wanted something out of him. They moved his parents and him, or his mum and him, to out of their borough. So I think he was at
Wow.
risk. Yeah. So then he had to get recalled after that because I can't really defend that one. This is a kid that's already being exploited. That's high on the list of like alert sort of targeted child, needs to have a safe, accommodation or whatever. I thought, nah, I can't really risk that. And all your other behaviour has shown a pattern of you're going back into that lifestyle, no matter what. I'd literally given him so many opportunities, like tied him into like education and employment in the community, got him a key worker that was working with him, that was waiting for him at appointments and he wouldn't show up. Then I'd go on the phone to him and he'd be like, yeah, I'm on my way, I'm on my way. And then he'd just show up at the last minute, which is good. But after a while, it started to stop. He obviously was like what we would say would be false engagement, which was very common. People know how to play the system and stuff. But yeah, it just got to a point where he ended up getting recalled, sadly, and was in jail during COVID, was put in a cell, 2-man cell during COVID with someone, didn't cope with it very well, would ring me from prison, like completely just going off on at me, being like, I can't stay in the cell, you have to move me. And I'm like, I don't work in prison, I can't do that. Like, I'll express that I've got concerns about your well-being, and I did, to the jail. But obviously in COVID, where they're going to put you, you have to stay where you are. Not only that, it's prison. You know, you're kind of out of control in an environment like that. So he just had to stay there. But that was very disheartening because I'd done so much for him, and it was like, raw, it was all a fake thank you. Like, I used to even not even do appointments in my office. I used to have to go to social services to do appointments with him because he was even at risk in the probation office that I used to work in. Like, I probably went out of my way for him. And that's some of the stuff that you would do. But when you're working with like 60 plus cases, you can't really be doing that for every case. It's only one of me. Like, and that's when it started to get a bit on top with the cases, like when they started to pile on. But at the beginning, I was doing some good work with people and actually did get results that were like, I know have changed some lives.
So you mentioned kind of two things there. So what do you think changed that approach for you? Because obviously you come in with like no understanding of how things work and that kind of fresh perspective. And then your first case, you put everything into it and they let you down. But also on the other hand, now you're bombarded with loads of cases. Did either of those things change? Well, you kind of mentioned it changed your approach to work, but which one kind of had the greater impact on how you did your job? Was it kind of being let down from that first case after having high expectations, or was it just the general workload?
Yeah, I just think when you work in probation, I can only speak from my personal experience. Like, someone else might love it, but it was a very dark environment to work in. First of all, offices were old school, like they looked like some 70s school. Like, it was all oak paneling and like interview rooms that looked like you're in a police cell. Very traumatizing. It had a big metal door on reception. Like, it just was very nasty, dark, dim. Like, it's giving Miss Trunchbull's office. Like, that's what the whole building looked like Miss Trunchbull and the Chokey. Like, it was giving that. And obviously there's no money, so they weren't going to renovate it. So that's first off the aesthetics of the building. Then you'd come into work, and I remember when I first started my job, and I don't know why people do this, but you just hear all the aunties and the people that have been there for a while, like, moaning about the job all the time. Like, why are you here? Don't let them do this to you. They're going to do that to you. They're going to do this to you. And I'm like, I've actually come in quite bright-eyed and, like, keen and enthusiastic to start a new role, and you're kind of jading it a bit. So that was warning signs from the beginning.
Do
Then
you think they were valid warning signs, or do you think they're just kind of projecting onto you?
I think I would have maybe at that point maybe viewed work in a different way, more so like I knew it was going to be hard when I come into it, like, and I had the energy to go at that point. I wasn't burnt out and like miserable about the job, and I used to kind of think like, leave then. Do you know what I mean? No one's telling you to stay at these jobs that you're all moaning about. Like, leave. They didn't want to because it's a civil service position, so you get protected in that, with a lot of benefits and stuff. And obviously with service and time, you get a lot more like benefits. So yeah, it's just like I was just used to be like, oh, or whatever, like you're just moaning, and try and hang around with people that are positive. And then yeah, I had my cases and stuff, and I think I was like on 35 to 40 cases for a while. Bearing in mind, like I'm working in an area that is very high with complex needs. Like it was an area where it was all going on. Like you had prostitution, you've got gangs, you've got like knife crime, you've got like weapons, you've got mentally insane people really that are criminals out there that are out there attacking people in broad daylight or in the park. Like you've got people that with kids, like it's just all, yeah.
Is there any
like
particular standout one that kind of
very intense.
stands out to you? Any particular ex-offender that
There's
you
some,
faced that had like a crazy crime that shook you to your core?
I remember there was one, and this might be like a bit extreme to talk about, but for me it's not. But sorry if it is. But this was
Forgive
daily
me.
bread and butter, where I had a guy who basically had a girlfriend and was she was a girl that was quite attractive or whatever, and they'd premeditated to go into clubs and rob people. This one actually like proper made me think, whoa, about life, because it's like just going to being a young girl and going to clubs, you see so many guys like spending a lot of money and you think it's quite normal and stuff. Then you're like, wow, like you could actually be victimized for that. But yeah, like this guy and his girlfriend, anyway, this girl goes to a club with her friend, like me and Esther, right? We go to the club and we find this guy who's popping bottles, and he's got obviously watches, chains, whatever. He's there acting like a big man or whatever, looks drunk because he's obviously drinking from bottles and whatever. Like, they go and target this guy, sat down with him now, had a great night. He's then exchanged numbers with them and stuff, and they've gone home, and they were like, yeah, we'll meet up again or whatever. And obviously he's feeling them. So I think like the next day or maybe a couple of days later, he like contacted them and was like, why don't you come over to ours? Like I guess he thought we'd been in a club, we'd been drinking together already. Like, why don't you come to my house? We'll have some drinks or whatever. So she goes to his house with her friend, and they're watching like this video, or like they were actually watching porn, and this is what it said in the paperwork: watching porn and drinking alcohol and stuff, and just getting drunk, and obviously everyone's getting a bit more relaxed and whatever, and he's thinking that it's going to go in a way that he wants it to go. And it turned out that like, nah, it was a setup. Like, she got her boyfriend to come into his flat knowing that he'd been intoxicated again, but led them to his flat where everything would be. Like, if you had any like belongings, it would be in a flat, wouldn't it? And they come in, and the way that they assaulted him was like really extreme. Like, they cut his stomach open, his intestines were hanging out. He had to, when they found him, he was holding his like intestines in. I know it's really gruesome. Like, the reason I say that is because I feel like that's really excessive force for somebody to rob your house. Like,
I mean,
actually,
it's excessive force in any way that you shape it.
well, it is, but like
crazy.
for a robbery, that's quite, when you think of it with I don't know, like a risk management or that kind of aspect, kind of point of view, you think of it like maybe normally someone might get punched, or maybe someone would be tied up, or it wouldn't be like actually doing that to a human being, And the girls were there, and obviously they robbed him, and he took everything, and he's got life-changing injuries for that. There's another story about that as well, actually, where, have you got time?
Yeah, of course.
There was another story as well about a girl who was involved with this guy. Okay, so this guy's on probation. Let's just call him X, yeah? X is on probation, so she's friends with X. And she's got other male friend, yeah, who she's saying has got like a new car on finance, right? A really nice new car. I think it was just something like a BMW 3 Series or something. But she was speaking to X about it. And then X told her that he wants that friend to meet up with him because they both got money and maybe do like a business proposition or whatever. So it turns out that she ended up bringing that friend to meet X, and when they were there, they called him inside a flat, or X called him inside of the flat, and basically like completely beat the man up. I know it's really extreme. Like, sorry if this is like a bit heavy, but they beat him up. I'm even trying to like not get too graphic, but they ended up tying him up, and then they tied up the girl as well, because they were like, well, you might talk, kind of thing. And they ended up like literally torturing this guy. Like, they ended up like moving him from address to address. They kept him there for a few days. They ended up putting like a iron on him and stuff. And the reason being was because he wasn't like giving them access. They were basically trying to blackmail him for money. They made him call his mum up while they were torturing him and be like, I need 20k right now, pay it right now. She obviously couldn't, so he was getting tortured.
And you would have to deal with the offenders of these cases.
I'm dealing with the person that's done it, yeah, and coming out and helping them like fix their life. Yeah, so, and you've obviously got to be non-judgmental. Certain things
how do you do that? How do you separate the crime from the individual?
He was very scary, that one. Sometimes you look at them and they're like, you know that there's, yeah, you're someone that's like, you're proper fully on that side. Like, you're not going to ever, you're like, as a human being, you're built up and made up like that. You're just too far gone that way, and you operate like that. And you might maybe have a personality disorder, or maybe a mental health condition that makes you think to, you know, decide things how you do, or choose that life that you do, kind of thing, you know. No shame. There is certain disorders and stuff out there that can make people feel like that. You know, or enjoy being antisocial, or enjoy inflicting pain on other people. But you just have to kind of be understanding to it. But I don't know, man, like, it really was. Looking back now, I went into that when I was 25, I think. And I was there for 3 years or 4 years. And it really maybe wasn't the right time in my life to do that kind of work, because it was proper, it burnt me out quite quick. But I always did try and do the best that I could for the people that I had in front of me, because I just saw it as, I am your last chance saloon. I'm here to monitor you and make sure that you're doing things good. But while you're here, like, let me help you. Like, I know that I've got like links to do things, or I've got like, you know, ways that we could actually try and figure things out. If you're actually serious, you can get the help. But there was definitely a lot of other probation officers that were not really supportive, wouldn't really, like, it was very common to hear in the probation office stuff like, a bit of luck, he'll be stabbed next week. And I'll be like, did you really just say that? Like, I know obviously that you're outganged by people that are laughing at it. And at this point as well, it was kind of before people became as woke as they are now. But it just happens so often. It's like, this is what you're comfortable to say now. And yeah, it is the kind of characters that you're imagining that would say comments like that as well. I'm not going to verify, but things like, you know, he's only going to be a drug dealer anyway, and stuff like that. Just said in banter, and it's like, this is normalised, like, da-da-da-da-da, but yeah. I just tried to, like, do my thing and make my change in my way with my role and through my impact that I could give, because that is the system, sadly. And you, like, you know, standing up to it and stuff, it helps in a small case scenario, but that is how I'd found and why I'd left the organisation, because I just didn't agree with how their outlook was on life. I tried to come in and make a difference, and quickly realised it's broken. There is no difference, sadly, to make, unless you're an anomaly, literally.
I know sometimes they say it in jokes and things like that. Did that ever come out in actual actions and activities that you saw make an actual direct impact on decisions being made?
I've been told by people that maybe when their officer was off and I have to see their client for them in their appointment, that when they walk into probation, they're questioned, why are you wearing a puff jacket? Why have you got an electric scooter? Why are your nails long? Is it because you used them to scoop up and take drugs? That proper try and fire questions at them when they come in. It's like, A, they're not going to answer and tell you the truth anyway, even if they are. And B, like, even if that was me in it, that would be like, whoa, obviously back up on the wall. This is a very triggering environment anyway, because I'm locked into a room with a metal door, waiting for my appointment. There's rival gang members sitting in the same waiting room as you, like, trying to see their probation officer as well. That used to go down in reception. But yeah, like, there was people that used to treat them like that. I don't know in terms of like recall stuff, because I wouldn't be too proof. But I did used to see sometimes people being recalled for maybe not turning up to their appointment 3 times in a row. Like probate, and you can do it by policy, but you're supposed to like give the person a chance, man. Like if that's someone
Three
that's
times is a couple of chances.
yeah, but if it's someone that's a drug user and just operates around funding their habit and being, trying to find money to get money, like the first thing that they're gonna want is drugs. They're not gonna think about probation. They don't even turn up to the doctor's appointments or other things going on in their lives. Why would they turn up to that? And so you've got to like praise the small wins with people. But and if out of maybe 4 times they've turned up once, I wouldn't have been so quick. I would have tried different ways. Like maybe I'll come and meet you, or maybe like we'll try a different way around it. Not just be quick to straight send someone back to jail. And they do it sometimes because it obviously relieves their workload as well. Like one person's in jail, you're not thinking about them. They're in a secure unit. It's literally like taking a problem and putting it in a box. So that's that. But then it is still a person's life who's now got a pattern of returning to jail on there when maybe some of the things that on there were questionable. But there is sometimes where people have been sent back to jail, and I'm like, yeah, you like I couldn't pin you down for a while. You needed to go down for a while ago, but I couldn't pin you down for a bit. Like maybe somebody that was doing dodgy things, like I would say like sex offending and like domestic violence and stuff. Them ones they figure out a way because they need to get to that victim. Do you know what I mean? So you see people thinking about odd ways of how to get their ways to people and doing things slyly and being super nice on the phone, or maybe when the police come, the victims aren't going to speak to them. So what can you do? Yeah, like those ones were a bit hard to pin down, but I didn't feel bad for doing it because it ultimately kind of was my decision. It goes past the manager as well, and it goes to court. But it would be my recommendation that first flags it up, like, yeah, this person's done this, this, this. I write a long report. It's got all dates, time stamped, everything about communications, what was found, what was said, extracts from emails. I'd put it all in one long report, and then I'd send it to my manager and be like, can you review it? Most of the times they just used to review it and accept it, and then the person would straight away be arrested. They used to set people up to come to the office for this as well. Like, come for an appointment. You come for an appointment to probation, and there'd be police there waiting to pick you up because the probation officer knows that you're gonna have to turn up to probation. But they don't know that they're being recalled. They're just plucked off the street, literally bundled into the car and taken straight to jail. Like there has been times in probation where there's been like a reception room where we're all waiting, and the probation officer, I don't know why they think this is a good process to have. I can understand from a safety aspect, but ethically it's not. There'll be a bunch of people waiting in there. They're all obviously traumatized from jail as well. Like all already don't want to be in probation, already like looking around like who's in the same room as me, how do I get out? Then the police bust in and arrest someone in the waiting room because they're in a contained space. Like I said, a metal door that you have to press a buzzer to come in and out from. It's not like an open door that you can just swing and leave. Like they have to buzz you in and out. So you're locked in the room. It's effectively a jail cell, and they're literally arresting you in front of everybody. And it used to kick off in the reception because of that. Like, they used to be like, oh my god, how can they be doing that in reception? Like, oh, it's just like jail. Like I'm going like people PTSD. You can imagine like just getting really triggered by that and thinking like I'm out of jail though. How is this happening in the community kind of thing? And how did they just sneak up? How can I trust that I can come here? Do you know what I mean? To my appointment. It's just a bit mad. So yeah, it was tiring. Like you end up thinking that you can help people and save the world, yeah, but then you realise like you're fighting a fire that's uncontrollable. And you might make small wins and differences in people's lives and stuff, but ultimately the world isn't set up for you to really pick yourself up unless you've got a lot of support around you. You've got what we say support factors, like maybe a good family, maybe you've studied before, maybe you've got a few qualifications that you could use to pick up from somewhere, dedication, maybe you need to take a cut with money for a while because when you're released you don't get paid a lot of benefits. You're released with like £43 to get you set up in life, literally. Well, it's taxpayer money, isn't it? That's all they can afford to give, I guess. But where's that going to get someone? You know, it's just like everything's against you. So there's all those support things need to be in place for you to get somewhere. And obviously not everybody has that, because the type of people sometimes that are in, you know, prison are people that have had hard experiences in lives and have ended up there because they've witnessed stuff, or maybe you're operating out of trauma to certain things. So yeah.
It's a unique outlook, because everywhere you go, you have kind of two perspectives on it. People that can understand things from your point of view, but then there's also people that have the perspective of these people have committed crimes and they should be where they're at, or it kind of takes away the human element of the person, so they can't really look past the crimes. You having to do that on a daily basis is intense in itself. What impact did it kind of have on your mental health over the 3 to 4 years that you were there?
I think it made me very paranoid at one point, because I was reading a lot of, so when you get a new case, you get like a big dossier of paper, whether they're in jail or whether they are getting released from court, like, and it's a community sentence, you get this big paperwork file that you have to read. I think it's called what's it called? Initial bond, I can't remember now. Initial pack or something like that. And everyone's got one, so you pick it up. I have to read it. It's the case. So it's got everything in there.
Is
like,
that the 70-page document you mentioned before?
No, that's called Oasis document. That's like a risk management document. I'll explain that to you in a sec. But this one is a dossier. Anyway, I'm reading it, and it's like got CPS papers in, and CPS papers got Crown Prosecution Service papers, where it's the notes from the court case, literally, like word for word what's it called? Transcripts, like the list of pre-convictions that the person might have had. So I get a proper eye shot of it all, and I read it, and there was a lot of stuff about stuff that could have been me, like, or freak accidents that people would be in, like, or freak attacks that people would have, that the people that I was working with obviously would commit. And you're like, wow, like, this is not like, there's one about this lady who met this guy who was my client in a pub, and they were getting on fine. Little did she know that he's a veteran that's like traumatized, very badly traumatized from war, and also his childhood, which is why he even ended up in the army. And he was very, very violent and had a very, very bad drug habit, like coke, after the army. Like, literally locked himself in a room once, sniffing coke and lots of alcohol. Like, tried to kill himself like that. I know, sad, but also, wait till you hear what he did. So he took the girl home. Funnily enough, he was actually quite a good-looking guy as well. Like, I can see how he could chat a woman up and easily get girls. Do you know what I mean? So, everyday guy, really scary. Went to a normal pub, brought this lady home, and then obviously they had sex and stuff. And I think she'd gone to get her keys to leave, and he switched on her and literally punched her and broke her nose. And then, like, I think, like, beat her up a little bit more and stuff, and she got afraid, like, am I being kept in this flat as well, and you're going to assault me like this, kind of thing. I think she managed to get away, but he obviously got done for like ABH or something. And that was just like, that could happen to anyone. Like, how many girls go home with a guy? Like, you don't know if someone's going to turn on you when you're trying to get your keys to go home. Like, that's so weird. There was like one about this guy that got on a bus, and a lady got on, and she smiled at him, and she had a lanyard with her work like thing on it, like the what's it called, like logo. So looking at the lanyard, you're going to know where she works, her name, everything. Think about it. She just smiled at this guy on the bus, turned into stalking her. Went to her workplace, stalked her at work, like would turn up to her work, would wait for her and stuff. I think tried to follow her home. I think maybe tried to enter her home at one point. You know, and that's just from smiling at a stranger on the bus. I'm not saying that everyone's going to do that to you, but there is some people, like I said earlier, people out in the world that are geared up like that, and that's what they want to do to people. Yeah, it's weird. Like, different types of people that committed different crimes would be different in terms of engagement with probation. Like, funnily enough, the sexual offenders were the ones that used to engage quite well, because they were so terrified of the stigma of it in society that they used to turn up to their appointments, do everything, and just try and live under the radar. Like, do you know what I mean? Instead of getting caught. But then, obviously, there's been times where they have been caught out still after they've done what they've done, because they're like might have the urges to behave like that. You know, they're gonna get caught again. and you're like, whoa, like that person was doing so well. I got them a flat, he was settled, like he was going to work, like he was trying to really pick up with his life, and like you still went online and chatting up young girls and stuff. And like, yeah, it's just, you just realize that you go in a bit like optimistic and thinking that you can change things and stuff, and then you soon realize that you're, if you make changes, it's all on you to do that. It's not, don't rely on the government to help,
It's
because
small changes that you kind of feel don't really make an impact on the larger scale. And I'm guessing that's why you left.
I left because I ended up like getting lots of cases piled onto me, and I'd never want to cut round a case and not do it properly, or not sort someone's housing out that's being released from prison. Like, that's already quite a traumatizing thing, isn't it? Like, maybe I do sound a bit sympathetic, but remember, I've come into this job to do this, to help people. Like, I haven't come in to enforce and crack a whip on anyone. Like, that's just not in my, nowhere in my personality to do that. I'd rather sit down and talk to you and try and understand you and try and talk you round out of doing things and stuff. And it did work a couple of times, but yeah, it just got a lot. And then like I couldn't do the quality of work that I wanted to do. Started speaking to a management. There was a big change in the service where like the private side merged with the government side. So probation was split into two. Half of it was privatized by an American company who tried to come in and work with their American ways of doing things. UK laws and systems are a little bit different to America, and it never worked. And they ended up buying back, the government ended up buying back the other half, and it got things. So in that was a lot of changes, a lot of like unhappy staff, a lot of movement from staff, management, were leaving and changing and stuff, like, or they had to deal with a lot of grumpy staff like working there, and were getting stressed and stuff. So I got a new manager. Mine left. He went to go and live in France. He literally couldn't deal with it, and he was lovely as well. But then I got this new guy. I tend to employ a certain type, if you get what I mean, of person in certain management positions. But he was just an idiot to me. Like, he just was horrible. I ended up going off sick for like 4 months. Because I thought with civil service, you get paid, like, I'd been there now for 4 years, so I'd get paid a certain amount of months, full pay. And I could maybe use that to look for a new job, as well as being like overworked and coming home from work crying sometimes. Like, why did I have to make this decision for someone? Or having a client that even committed suicide, or stuff like real dark stuff. And I was tired of it. So yeah, I thought, let me take this 4 months out. I'm going to just try and get into a different field or a different type of work. And it was the best thing that I ever did, to be honest. I got paid full pay. I was off for 4 months. Like, I had to do a lot of therapy and counselling. I did do that part as well. And took a lot of time to like relax and kind of calm down from like a bust state, like a very overwhelmed state where I mentally was not cool. I remember the day that I went sick, my brain, I told my mum, it felt like I was in a car crash. Like, my brain was like buzzing. I was so stressed out from work. And I slept for like 3 days, just knackered.
It's high intensity constantly,
Yeah.
right?
I don't talk to people about it a lot because it's like, it's quite dark. Like, and everyone goes for their own thing as well, But it was definitely workplace stress being like, I think I wasn't unique in probation. A lot of people used to go off sick a lot and come back because you're a civil servant, you're protected. Like I said earlier, it takes a whole panel of civil servants to get rid of you. You can't just fire you. You're very protected in civil service. So it's for quite sought after. But yeah, and I found a job actually working for a charity, which was a charity actually that employed ex-offenders to work for them as well. So I kind of liked that from the start. Kind of did a bit of
A bit of
partnership work
crossover.
in probation. Yeah, I knew a couple names there. It was based nearby, and I worked there. And I was an employment advisor for young people that were out of education, subject to working with probation or have a past criminal history, and just trying to mentor them really into getting jobs. And that was where I always wanted to be, like helping people. It was a bit of a combination of teaching, probation, I guess, monitoring someone and being like a mentor, but also teaching them and doing something positive. That's where I found a bit more of my, that okay, this feels a bit more where I should be, kind of feel.
What do you think was the difference as to why you felt more comfortable there?
Well, charity being one, like people are going to be there because they want to be there and help. Then it was also the type of staff that were there. Like, I think after coming from quite a certain type of staff environment, from what I've said earlier, and quite it being quite authoritative and quite old school and quite dated and quite just racist at points, or all the rest of the stuff that we know what the system is, into a charity environment where people are like, okay, I've actually been there in jail. Like, I've come out now and I really want to help people and stuff. And like, you had people in there that were like now coaching and proper big gangbangers, to be fair, that have like big names, um, that were working for that charity that like are now doing so much of giving their blood and sweat and tears into helping kids that they can be called at 4 a.m. like, this kid has been in a police cell, can you come and advocate for them? That person's leaving their bed to go and help that kid. It's their way of, like, I guess, penance, is it? What's it called? Repenting your sins, kind of thing. That's the way that they look at it. So there were met some good characters there that were in it with, like, you know, the right heart, and the charity felt very family, like family feel and stuff. And yeah, I met some people that like I made good friends with, and we were all similar minded. Like my friend Phoebe, who we met the other day, like we're really similar. We've got the same. We will always have the same views on certain things, so we can have discussions about similar things. Like, it was probably, was a different kind of working environment. So yeah, I liked that for a year, but I've also found charities to be a little bit disorganised, maybe a bit less structured as well than a government job, and sort of started to miss that. And that's kind of what I want to go into now. But I just want to like leave this whole crisis and trauma work behind me, because I think I've done my time now. I think I've given back, and I think it's got to a point now where it's like, I do realise that there's not a lot you can do for people. Sadly, even if I wanted to, and even if they wanted it, that's the sad part. There's just not a lot to give them. Nothing at all. Not even housing. Not even a home. When it's like comes down to a home and accommodation, you need an address to even wake up from to go to work. Do you know what I mean? Or have your kids in, or feel safe in. Like, when that's not available, like, we're in a dark place, and I really just hope that it does change.